So hi, I'm just replacing Amy here, who couldn't be here because she's sick. So I'm Sophie Louveaux from EDPS. I think Lillie will do the presentations maybe after I introduce the panel. Introduce the topic, rather. So basically today we're talking about toys that listen, and as you know, I mean, Hello Barbie, Amazon Echo, the home robot Jibo, part of a new wave of connected toys and gadgets for the home that listen and interact. Different to smartphones, these devices are always on, blending into the background until they're needed by the adult or the child user. We don't yet know all the information our new toys are collecting, storing, or disclosing, nor do we know the effect of introducing listening toys into the home. And there's somewhat of a chilling effect to the fact that this data is being collected from our kids, certainly without them realizing the implications of the data they're possibly giving away. Security experts have warned that new interactive Barbie could be exploited by hackers to spy on children. They've warned that the information could be used to find someone's house or business and to have access to their home network and everything that Barbie had recorded. According to them, it's just a matter of time until we're able to replace their servers with ours and have her say anything we want. So toys that listen bring a new dimension to the Internet of Things, and I think it's time that we think about not only the privacy implications, but also the ethics of our surveillance economy. This panel brings together an interdisciplinary group of experts to discuss best practices for privacy, consumer, and user control regarding connected devices in the home. Lillie here, who's and correct me if I'm wrong, Associate Director of EPIC, which is the electronic, you're not? Okay, you're gonna introduce yourself then, because I don't have her line. Sorry, I've stepped in yesterday. But anyway, Lillie's gonna introduce the panel, and then each one will speak for about 5 minutes. I suggest that we have the questions only after that, so let them speak, and then the floor will be yours. Lillie, the floor is now over to you.
Thank you. I give her a hand for being willing to step in at the very last minute to help us out. Very much appreciate it, Sophie. My name is Lillie Coney. I was formerly Associate Director at the Electronic Privacy Information Center. I have, won't say how many decades of interest in doing privacy and technology policy. Currently, I am the chair of the IEEE PAR 1912. It's a privacy and security architecture for consumer wireless devices working group. The objective is to develop standards that would help with privacy and security of consumer wireless devices, looking at the IoT. I'd like to introduce our panel, which is, the topic is, I think, very intriguing, and just the first of many, I would presume, of new technologies that will be part of the Internet of Things and will raise policy and legal and social and cultural issues as we move forward. Sophie Louveaux is head of the Unit Policy and Consultation European Data Protection Supervisor. Since October 2004, Sophie Louveaux has been a legal advisor to the European Data Protection Supervisor. In her role at the EDPS, she has served the supervision team in ensuring compliance with the Data Protection Regulation 45/2001 in the EU institutions and bodies. She was responsible for coordinating EDPS relations with the data protection officers of the EU institutions and bodies, has drafted a position paper on their role in ensuring effective compliance with the data protection regulation. She now leads a team in charge of examining the data protection and privacy impact of proposed new legislation and advising the EU legislator in this respect. We have Malte Spitz, who is an author, activist, and politician. Malte lives in Berlin with his wife and 2 children. He is a member of the board of the German Green Party, and works as a data protection consultant. In 2014, he published his book, What Are You Doing With My Data? He sued Deutsche Telekom over his data retention and published the data in an interactive visualization in 2011. I love activists like that. We have Riccardo Masucci. He is a senior policy manager at Intel in Brussels. He leads Intel's activities on privacy and security policies in Europe, both at the EU and member state level. Before joining Intel, Riccardo worked for 7 years in the European Parliament, where he served as policy advisor to the vice chair of the Justice and Home Affairs Committee, and where he developed a genuine interest for data protection legislation and more generally for privacy issues. In his current role, he enjoys working with technologists and policymakers to understand innovation, power, and societal challenges of new technologies. We have McCrory with Samsung, United Kingdom. He has worked in technology since 1996, focusing mainly on startups in the online video, mobile advertising, and IoT space. Doing everything from systems administration to sales engineering to product management, he has acquired deep knowledge of how technical solutions are made and delivered. And that's my list of introductions. Thank you. I hand it back over to Sophie.
Okay, I suggest we kick off and we start with Malte.
Yeah. I just have to start it. I hope you can see it. Perfect. Yeah, thanks also for the invitation here today. As already said, I'm working on these issues now for a couple of years, and I'm especially interested in the issue of what are companies but also state authorities collecting on us. Not only informations like data retention or PNR files, but also, as I now have two small kids, also the issue, like we are talking here today about toys, and it's a special discussion here today, because at the same time this morning it's also the start of the biggest toy fair in the world. And you will see, if you can see all the advertisements now, that the toys get more connected through the internet, but also in-house systems that they can speak, which some toys already are doing for couple of years, but that they can also listen to your kids, that they can also interact with your kid, and that they can also analyze their behavior. And I think we shouldn't only talk about a special toy, but I think we should talk about the general trend, because talking only about one thing and say this is the only problem, I think isn't the clear answer. I think that the general trend that our home becomes more open with connected toys, but also with for example smart home devices and so on, is an issue that we have to talk not only from a, I would say, technical level, but that we also have to talk about from a political level, because we can't stop a general trend, but we have to talk about how to protect self-determination in the digital age, and we also have to talk about how to protect our children from the companies and also maybe from the interests of their own parents. But because if you look at the different toys, you can see that almost all toys have a special dashboard to control these things, so that the parents get access to the conversations, for example. And I have my Hello Barbie here with me. It's my own personal Christmas gift, And if you turn it on, the only thing at the moment she says is,
my batteries need to recharge.
okay,
Send me to the charging station.
that's the only answer I get at the moment, because it isn't charged and the Barbie doll isn't connected to a Wi-Fi network. And I also have to admit, to start now with the Barbie doll, that I think this is the first US product I got, where I got, I would say, 8 concrete and specific points where they told me, hey, this doll is collecting all the
My batteries need
conversations. So it is something where I think that Toy Talk, the company, has thought about. But if you look at their own privacy policy, you can also see that they still say that they collect all this information, and the only clear answer is this end sentence where they say that they don't want to use it for advertisement, except that the conversations can be used for all different types of things. And I think this is the general problem. You can only use a Hello Barbie if you say that you are that it is okay for you, that you are that they can collect all these conversations, and that you have no possibility to differentiate. You can't say it's okay that this Hello Barbie can speak, but I don't want that they transcript, for example, the conversations. So you have no choice at the moment, because either you are using it or you are losing it. And I think this is a system that has to end, and that's also something I have to say where the politicians have to step in and also get active. I think that's like for the first stuff, and then I will tell something afterwards.
Okay. Okay, I do. Oh yeah, that's working. Okay, and over to Mike, I believe.
Hi. These are my notes. I'm not checking email. So just a bit about me. My name is Mike McCrory. I'm a senior product manager at Smart Things, which is a subsidiary of Samsung. And just so everyone knows, if they're not familiar with Smart Things, we have a platform for connecting all the devices in your home and automating all those devices. And so the points that Malte makes are very good. And one of the things that we at Smart Things are really cognizant of is that we do collect a lot of data. When you connect your devices to our platform in your home, we are collecting a lot of data. We don't necessarily know what to do with that data yet, and how to make that data work for the customer in a meaningful way. Now, one of the things I will counter with is that there is a responsibility for the customer to educate themselves on the products that they buy. They need to understand what they're buying, what that product is doing, how it's communicating with different companies who make that product, and how those companies are using that data to potentially monetize them, or to do things that they may not necessarily want in their lives. But following up on that, there's also a responsibility from corporations to provide a level of transparency so that consumers can be well educated. And at a certain point, there's there's kind of a deficit on both sides there. Corporations aren't necessarily providing the information necessary. That, you know, the statement there is fairly ambiguous. It's like, you can't advertise to children. What else can you do, right? It's not covering all the bases, and I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the corporate level to really make it sure that the average user can understand what it is they're purchasing and what that data is doing, where it's going, and how it's going to potentially try and take their money.
Okay, that's good kickoff. Challenging questions. Riccardo, over to you.
Thanks a lot. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of this panel. We got great input from the two previous speakers. I agree with Malte and with Mike that actually we need to put this conversation on smart toys within a bigger framework. Smart home, for instance, is one of them. I would like to contribute to this debate, bring it into the discussion another perspective, complementary to the two that were just proposed. One perspective that recognizes the specificity of smart toys, and at the same time looks at existing principles and tools to address the new challenges in a effective fashion. We all acknowledge here that smart toys, primarily because they are used by kids and they are in the home, they actually may pose some privacy and security specific risks. But actually, this is why, and above all for smart toys, this is why it is extremely important in the manufacturing, in the design phase, to take into consideration who are the end users, and so who are the people interacting and engaging with those technologies. So I think that one important point is the user-centric approach in design and manufacturing smart toys. But let me also frame our conversation in this framework, saying that we live now in a very complex ecosystem, ubiquitous, extremely dynamic, where there are billions of devices connected among them and with the cloud. More and more in our everyday life, we use objects that have sensors embedded. Someone estimates that by 2020 we will have 50 billion devices all connected. So it is clear that with this technological landscape, we cannot, for instance, look at risks as separate silos. So we cannot look just at the privacy risks without considering security risks, without considering safety. So take, for instance, a smart toy. If it fails in security, so if someone can hack this smart toy, it is very likely that this device will fail in ensuring privacy, and most probably safety will be easily compromised. So this is, for instance, a way to look at this problem, a more comprehensive approach. But let me come back also to what I said before. We acknowledge that there are new risks, but on the other hand, probably we can cope with these new risks with existing tools and principles. And I refer especially to FIPS, Fair Information Privacy Principles, because these are globally recognized values. They have proved effective across this landscape, which had a dramatic technological change in the last years. FIPS have served as basis for all legislation around the world, and they actually now need to be reinterpreted and adapted to the new ecosystems, to the new challenges of new technologies. Because if we look at collection limitation, use limitation, or if we take, for instance, purpose specification or individual participation, well, they are all still very meaningful concepts, very meaningful principles, and they can actually steer today still policymakers and manufacturers and companies to successful solutions. So if you take, for instance, policymakers in the last years, there was some guidance by the COPPA rules, for instance, the fact that the FTC last November, if I'm not wrong, approved image matching as a way to identify to verify the identity of the holders of parental responsibility. Or if you look at the recent text of the GDPR recently adopted, there are specific conditions for child consent that are laid down in Article 8. So there's some guidance on the one hand from policymakers. On the other hand, companies need to rethink privacy, and we at Intel we put a lot of thoughts on this, and we also wrote an interesting paper on the possibility to rethink privacy and rethink fair information privacy principles in relation to the new landscape, new technological landscape. So probably companies should have a stronger focus on accountability. What does this mean, accountability? It means that companies should put in place privacy policies, strict internal privacy policies, and have also internal procedures to make sure that these policies are carried out and they bring to successful outcomes, to positive outcome, and to an effective protection for end users. Doing so, companies, they comply with the applicable law, but doing so, they also look beyond the existing law, because sometimes for policymakers it is difficult to keep up the technology pace. So I think that responsible companies can really make a valuable contributions with their own internal privacy policies. And when it comes to kids, this is even more important. To conclude, probably we all understand that there's a great potential in smart toys in terms of gaming, but also in terms of education, and probably also in terms of medical applications. But all this personalized experience that come with interaction, they are not valuable enough if they are not protected, if we do not provide enough privacy protection. So the fact that we are all here today discussing about smart toys means that the whole technology community wants to raise awareness, wants to improve the information around smart toys. The fact that we can have, as also Mike said, that we can have our end users more informed means that these children that now are using smart toys will be in 10 years, 20 years, they will be informed adult end users. So this is very important, and I think it's the right moment now to engage in a deeper conversation. What we should pursue at the same time in parallel is innovation, the innovative power of data, and at the same time privacy protection. Because actually privacy protection is the only way to ensure trust in technology. So this was my first input. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I give the floor to Lillie, who will handle the debate.
Thank you. I want to thank all today's panelists for their contributions to this discussion. I wanted to ask one question that I think would help pull the thread of what we've heard thus far regarding these new toys. There are technical perspective considerations that should be on the table. There are political considerations, societal impacts, social dynamics of families, consequences. We're looking at the Barbie toy in specific. The manufacturers of that particular toy and data protection, it's an old company. It's been around for a very long time. And if you started to talk to them about they need a privacy policy, they need to have a data protection policy, a program in place, they need to know what FIPS are. It may be a hard leap for them to be able to do that. And I like what Malte said about granular control over what that toy actually can do. bring to mind the seriousness of this in the United States. A lot of the baby cams, a lot of the scandal, will shock parents to find out that the baby cams that they have installed in their children's bedrooms for them to keep an eye on their children have been compromised because of a lack of strong password protection. And even the architecture infrastructure of the companies providing the service isn't strong enough to have prevented hacks from happening. So now we're about to put these toys out there, and I'm thinking these are probably the first. We already know Echo is out there. That's something that Amazon has. There are other applications that will be out there. I want to get sort of an overall view of your perspective on how this is going to drive the innovation curve. How are we going to deal with the political consequences? Is it going to have to be a bad outcome before we have a return to, have a return to the debate or have a debate? What could the potential societal impacts be? We're talking about kids who are going to grow up in surveillance situations in their home. How are they going to feel about surveillance when they become adults, and how might that impact society? And then, of course, social dynamics of families. When you talk about a toy a child may love and you discover that toy does something that is really creeping you out, come on, they're kids. They're not going to understand what's going on other than you took away a favorite toy. So how do we all kind of prepare ourselves to try to deal with some of these things? Panel, your turn.
I can voice some opinions on that. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how. It's Mattel that makes Barbie? Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see how a company like Mattel, who has traditionally made inanimate plastic objects, transitions into the world of interactive design, and I don't necessarily know how they're broaching that, but it seems like there's a critical need for some kind of oversight when there's a company that goes into a new territory like that, where you are managing not just the data of a consumer, but that consumer's child. And so it's going to be interesting to track that. I'm not going to make any claims here about how Mattel should conduct their business, but definitely I would be skeptical about a traditional old company like that switching to a very new business with very real consequences. There are tons and thousands of instances of companies that even specialize in security getting hacked and revealing their data. So a company like Mattel is kind of starting off not with the best resources available to them. They know how to manufacture plastic legs for Barbies, but running secure systems that collect data, especially voice and other types of sensitive data, that may be a tough thing for them to accomplish. And so outsourcing something like that to a company that's more adept at doing something like that may be something they want to do. But also, whatever company they outsource to has to have oversight and transparency. If I were product manager for what's called Hello Barbie, yeah, I don't have one, so I'm not terribly familiar with the product. But if I was a product manager for that, I would definitely dot my I's and cross my T's with regards to the security that is being deployed with that product.
But I would ask, it's the same situation with Samsung too, I have to say. Samsung is a company who knows to make a smartphone, and also who knows to make a smart TV. But if you have you have a smart TV, and the smart TV can also collect via voice recognition certain things, you also have to handle such data. I think it's the overall problems that we have business world, where we have old companies like it's there for 30 years, 50 years, 80 years, who start now to digitalize and handle personal data in a scale they actually never had before. And the one thing is doing it on their own and raising their own security level, or the second option is source it out to companies, and then those companies are in charge of all our data, of the data of Samsung, of Mattel, and so on. So you have certain companies who at least know how to handle IT security, but then they are in charge of all our data. So it's a little bit problematic situation, I would say. And I also wanted to answer the point of the political situation. I think the helpful thing is, since we are talking about children, I have to say, when it comes to children, politicians are always like, oh gosh, we have to be careful. Even all the politicians who said, I don't care about smartphone apps and I don't care about smart TVs, but if they know, okay, they are collecting all the conversations of my 8-year-old for half a year or 3 years, then they also get active because they understand that this data is there like from the first day on. Like the first smart toys today are there for I would say 3 years old, and then for 5 years old, then the Hello Barbie for 8 years old, then you have your own smartphone with, I don't know, fifth grade and so on. So like an average 18-year-old will have in 18 years data collection on them. It's impossible to imagine that yet, and therefore I think politicians are there more aware of to step in and say, okay, that we have to have some extra regulation, and this extra regulation is not only the situation as in the US where you have to have parental consent, because that like a parent doesn't pay $100 for a Hello Barbie and then afterwards say, oh, they want to have the consent to use it. No, I don't use it, so I go throw away $100 I just paid. So I think this situation could be an opener for change.
Well, from my side, as I said, I think accountability is very important, and it is very important that companies and policymakers can discuss together with civil society about these issues. The thing is, probably when we talk about smart toys, the challenges are even bigger, because smart toys are supposed to be in the home, and so in all cultures worldwide, we consider home as the place where we want to have the highest level of protection and privacy. So probably this is surely an issue that needs to be addressed by the whole society. Accountability is important because accountability entails the fact that a device do not collect all data, no, and we can set some settings in the device in order to limit the collection of data, in order to use only those data that are useful for the purpose of that toys or that device. So it is true, challenges are big, but we have actually the tools to cope with them.
Thank you. I think at this time it'd be good to hear from the audience questions that you may have. I think we can take like several, maybe 3 or 4, and then let the panel respond to those. And if you have a question, there is a person here with the mic. Just raise your hand, and she'll come to you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Vaal. I'm working for the government and in IT. What I notice is that not only manufacturers produce a lot of toys, but also they use a lot of subcontractors, many of them. And my question to you is, how on earth can you promise privacy or security if you don't know how secure your suppliers are, because they can implement things in the device that you don't know. They can program things that you don't know. It's embedded, it's hard-coded. What's your solution for that?
Well, I mean, I think there's obviously, you need to structure your business relationship such that you would be aware. Can everyone hear me fine? Yes, so such that you would be aware exactly what data is being transferred back and forth between any subcontractors or third parties that you would have collecting your data. Internally, you know, we do we outsource actually tons of third-party organizations to try and exploit our systems and do audits on our data integrity. And at a certain point, there's, and I don't want to use the word trust because that's a no-no, but there's a certain point where you have to understand that like the businesses operating are only as good as the contracts they have in place, and if a certain company with which you're subcontracting is going off and doing their own thing against a particular contract, you need to take a look at how those contracts are organized, and then also there needs to be legislation to say here's how a contract with regards to data privacy needs to be authored, and everyone needs to honor that. And if you don't, you're breaking the law. And right now, because it's kind of a brave new world, there aren't really those legal penalties. The government is still trying to get their arms around exactly how businesses should be interoperating with regards to data. Everyone kind of has done some hand waving around. It should be kind of like this, but there's no real. There's nothing so ironclad, such a boilerplate agreement that exists that really takes into account all these things, like what Malte is saying about, you know, a child grows up and then they're 18 and they figure out that, hey, wait, Mattel has been recording everything I said to my Barbie since I was a kid. I mean, in a way that's terrifying, and in a way it's kind of funny. But there needs to be legislation in place such that all the parties involved in making these devices are required by law to structure their agreements to protect that data. And I think there's because this is such a new industry, it's very slowly lurching towards that, but it's going to take some time.
Can I just add in that respect that at least in Europe there is EU legislation. I mean the current directive, Data Protection Directive, and it'll be the same in the new regulation, does have a provision whereby you have to choose a subcontractor who offers sufficient guarantees in terms of security and confidentiality of data, and then that has to be put in a contract. So I think, legally speaking, the rule is there. Whether or not it's applied is another issue. But I mean, the legal framework, at least EU, is present. Just if I can complement what you're
Has
saying.
anyone actually taken anyone to court over misuse of that yet?
That I wouldn't know. I don't know. Yeah.
And
I'm
I
curious.
would add
Yeah.
that in the United States, there's the Children Online Privacy Protection Act, which I think would be very interesting to see how this toy would fit in with that particular law. Because when it was written, there were no toys like this. But it was specifically written to protect children 13 years or younger. Other comments?
Well, I can say that I agree with what Mike said. Actually, in place there are strict contractual clauses with subcontractors, and I can tell for Intel we actually provide often technology to other companies, so we are less in the position to have subcontractors. I agree with Sophie. There are already some legal instruments in place, and actually the GDPR now, the recent General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, is even more stricter for liability of controllers, because actually consider joint liable controllers and processors of data, so also all the other sub-processors and subcontractors. So I think we have also a quite right legal framework. There's room for improvement probably, and again, it's up to companies and policymakers to find the most successful solutions together.
I would add one thing, that it's not just a matter of the people in the trusted chain of distribution. It's also whether that toy can it be compromised, can it be hacked, can someone use other technology to listen in on it's basically the baby monitor problem. And how do you apply a patch? And how do you deal with the fact that the IoT is just going to be awash with lots of different forms of technology, not just Barbie? What if Barbie's conversation would be picked up by the refrigerator or by another device, not joking, that wants to collect data out of that household and transmit that data? And if it figures out, hey, we can hack this, well, they won't call it hacking, but we can, we can, better understand our customers, but by gathering this additional information, and that may not be communicated, that these other devices may be able to, because it's within the proximity of this toy, this smart toy, use that toy without the knowledge of the manufacturer, unless somebody figures it out. So I think in the Internet of Things, we have to think broader than just the individual manufacturer, but the environment, where the device or toy might be used, and how that environment may pose challenges to the intended use, the intended sharing, the limitations, all the rules that may be in place by the manufacturer can be compromised.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Like, there is definitely a consumer education. I mean, there's two prongs that have been discussed: the notion of corporate responsibility, and then the notion of government oversight. But then there's also, which I think is more and more important these days, is the consumer educating themselves and making themselves aware. And that's, I mean, there's obviously a bunch of consumer advocacy groups around there. But at the same time, the average user isn't going to ask the question, is there a microphone in my refrigerator? And the problem is that a lot of times nowadays there is. And that's something, it's a new world of education for consumers that they really need to be aware of, and actually, especially as a parent going and buying something like a Hello Barbie, you really got to start asking some hard questions about what exactly you're bringing into your home. And I think getting consumers on board with asking those questions, silly questions like, does my refrigerator have a microphone? All of a sudden they have to start thinking about those types of things to ask.
Yeah, I would say yes, for sure. It's always the situation that the individual person who has this Barbie doll and so on is also in charge of certain things, but at the same time we have an environment where you go out, and if you want to buy at the moment a new fridge, you only get the advertisement where I say, hey, this has a microphone in it because it's so safe, it's so helpful for your everyday convenience, that for sure you always can go into a shopping mall and only see the stuff, oh God, an extra microphone here in the fridge, an extra microphone in my Hello Barbie, an extra microphone in my smart TV, but you also don't want to have only paranoid consumers who see in every device they get today an extra microphone, an extra sensor built in. I think you have to have certain things where you have to say this is okay, or if you want to activate it, then you have to activate it extra. At the moment, all the devices have all sensors activated at the first start, and then you can use it. But I think we should come to a situation, if you have the device, then you can say, okay, I would like to activate now the microphone, because I think having a microphone in my fridge is helpful. I don't know why, but yeah. And then you can say, okay, I also want to activate the webcam in it and so on. But at the moment, the only thing the companies are offering are saying, either you are applying to everything and say all is okay, or you can't use the device. And I think that's the situation we have to end. That you have to choose like from the highest privacy level, and that you then get also educated by the company. If you turn on your microphone, your conversations will be transferred to the following 8 companies. If you turn on this, it will be so that you have an overview, but at the moment you don't have the possibility to get an overview.
I can see the microphone in the fridge if you ever have to make a shopping list.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah, and you're right, because then it'll get transmitted to others, and you might get coupons for things that you say you want to pick up from the store. Another question from the audience.
Thank you. Yeah, microphone's on. Okay. So I would like to direct the discussion a little bit more towards specific aspects of toys. And what I was thinking about is personalized experience that you might have with smart toys. And that leads me to the question, what will happen if a toy dies or a toy becomes broken? What happens to the data? Can you reboot the personality of the toy in another toy? Or will we have to design dying processes for smart toys and deal with ethical challenge?
Okay. I don't have young children, but I think it's going to be I feel for the parents, okay? The kids are going to develop emotional bonds with these toys, okay? And you're right, there is a huge issue with people discarding data collection technology. And people buy, researchers do it all the time, buy something on eBay and they find all kinds of data just laying there. So yes, data destruction has got to be a part of the mix, but it's also going to be a very interesting thing because we're talking about children and how they play and their inner worlds and their imaginations. They have pretend friends that are invisible. Some kids go through that phase. Now they have this emotional bond with this inanimate object who may supplant their relationship with other children, who may disclose things to their toy they may not have even told their parents. Or some parents want to know about the inner lives of their children, but they're not the only ones having access to that data. So these are going to be that's why I brought societal family dynamics in, because this is a real thing, and parents are going to have to deal with this. The other thing, the favorite aunt, the favorite uncle, the cousin, what brings the talking Barbie and hands it to your child. They go for a day out and they buy it, and the child comes back with it. You've already made a decision you didn't want to have that in the home, but now the child has it in their warm little hands. And how are you going to deal with that?
But I have to say, I also have here again my Hello Barbie. There the conversations aren't connected to the Barbie doll. They are connected to the profile. I like created in the app. So I can switch it to a different Barbie doll, like this Hello Barbie. I think there are 3 different options, like one with dark hair and so on, so I can switch it. So I can say, okay, this Barbie doll is gone, so you get an extra one, and it has this, and it already has implemented the same conversation knowledge as these blonde Barbie. So it would be easier to say if the Barbie is lost, just get an extra one, and it will be like at least from the informations it will be the same one.
Yeah, I mean, from a product standpoint, Barbie's personality, as it were, will be stored in the cloud. But it also raises an interesting question of should Barbie die? I mean, should there be like a little ceremony that the kids have when their Barbie dies? Like, should you just be able to magically reanimate Barbie and her personality in a new toy, or should the toy actually expire? I mean, that doesn't necessarily talk about privacy necessarily, but I think it's kind of an interesting question. Should these toys actually have a life cycle, or can they constantly be resurrected?
Yeah, which as a lawyer triggers the question: how long can the data be kept, and what are the rules going to be about data retention of this data? So, I mean, if the data is linked to a specific doll, and then possibly it's put in a cupboard for a couple of years because your child just decides that he or she's got another friend, but then there's a baby sister who decides to resurrect the Barbie doll, and that will justify keeping the data for how many years? So what are the policies going to be about data retention? I wonder. I don't have the answer.
Probably there are also, some considerations on more generally on the possibility to access data, to modify data, to erase those data, and there is actually a legal framework.
The right for Barbie to be forgotten?
Kind of, or yeah. So I think in the end the answer probably might be the fact that when there are rights that relate to a person, then there must be some solutions for them to relate with those data. But it's on controllers the duty to make sure that this data subject can enjoy those right to access, those right to erase data, to modify data, or to resurrect dolls if this is the willingness of the data subject.
I wanted to add one question about fundamentally, if you have a surveillance device in the home, you have law enforcement may have an interest in that, that it's there already. In the U.S., there's a problem with something they call a third-party doctrine, which basically says if the information is not in your hands, in your possession, if it's with a third party, then you don't have Fourth Amendment protection for that. So anything like this, going down this road, I was just wondering, what are your thoughts regarding you might set the settings where data is only collected at certain times and that certain things are not shared outside of your home, but what if some other avenues start opening up because the technology is there and it's pervasive enough? Is it more a question about designing it from the beginning, research and development, for it to fit this particular profile, so it's not so easy to do something else with it?
We can also decide, for instance, to store more data into the device in some sense, because then the fact of transferring data to the cloud, might raise a higher expectation of accountability on companies. This might be a solution, a technical solution to this kind of concerns. But again, it's in the design phase and in production phase that company has to find appropriate solutions to these concerns.
Another question from the audience? How many of you would have loved a smart toy like this growing up? I mean, by the time you get to your teens, you probably want to bury it somewhere. Oh, hi, Stephanie.
Thanks very much, Stephanie Perrin, University of Toronto, and that actually is my question. I was concerned about the constitutional implications of this device. I'm also concerned about the health of the child implications. I think Sherry Turkle has written about this in her book. It's either Alone Together or Together Alone, about the increasing attractiveness of responsive robots as opposed to live humans in relationships, and I think that's a real concern, particularly when you're talking young children. But I'm also concerned about in Canada, this I don't think our charter adequately protects a young child from the intrusion of having their innermost thoughts collected by, well, first of all, their parents, secondly, their schools or anybody else that wants to get this data, and thirdly, law enforcement. Now, in terms of charter protection, this would be an unreasonable search and seizure under Section 8 of our charter, as long as the data is still in Canada, but we don't have any constitutional protection if it goes to a cloud controlled by the United States. Then you're under third-party doctrine, and I would suggest that that's probably true for a great many countries. So I'm a little concerned. Let's not be naive. If this toy is in the a home of an immigrant who might have links to terrorists that are of interest under our current surveillance laws, there'd be all kinds of people wanting to hear what the kid has to say about who's coming and going in the house and who might be reprogramming Barbie. So I think these matters cannot be left to the market. Somebody has to do that research, and my question to you is, who is going to do that? Thanks.
Thank you.
I see like the Hello Barbie is a perfect toy for law enforcement, actually, because you're not only getting the conversation of the small kid with a toy, but you also get all the conversations in the room. So you know when your parents are talking, because these microphones built in are good ones. They are not the cheapy ones. So I really asked myself, when is the FBI using it, or also the German police using it to tap or to conversations. And I think, like, I'm not a constitutional rights expert, but like from a political point of view, I think that there is a huge interest from the law enforcement, but also from the national security side, to get access to this data. And if you see here the privacy policy, they are transcripting every conversation. So it's quite easy just to then afterwards go through all the transcripts and search for certain words, for example. It's easy. It's zack. And then you can maybe get even a hint for a future case. So I also find it really difficult at the moment. I only can say for the Hello Barbie, it's only available in the US, and it would be interesting if they will also offer it for European countries, how they do the data collection there and also the transfer of the data. I don't know. It will be a challenge for them at least. And even from the European laws, I would say it would be possible for law enforcement to at least access the stored data in the cloud. It would be easy.
Thank you. We're getting close to closing of this panel discussion. I did want to offer that in the U.S. there is CLIA, which there would probably be argument over if it's a communication device or if it's an information service, which means your level of protection drastically changes. And of course you have the Patriot Act. But I think the underlying issue would be the challenges in the courts and what happens on the state level in the U.S. in particular, because they will pass their own laws to deal with issues as they arise. I wanted to ask the panel, each of you, to take about a minute to sum up your perspective on the topic we've been discussing, and offer your recommendation on what you think would be the most important thing that could be done since we're at the early phase of these smart toys coming out. Malte?
As I already said, I think from a political point of view and also from an activist point of view, smart toys are a helpful thing to start about to start a general discussion about the issue of smart devices in your home and all the connected points, like how can it be used by law enforcement, who gets access, how can this information be transferred, and so on. And I think this is a point where all institutions have to play in. Like, I would say it isn't only a US debate, because at the moment lots of smart toys are only available in the US. It's also a European debate. And I think if you want that those toys get more and more out there, I think that you have to have a clear catalog first of the IT security of the systems. If you look at the toys, it is the same for the example of the baby cams. They are not using strong encryption technology to transfer data. And secondly, you have to have the information who gets access to it, and that you also have what you said, this type of granular control, that you say, I approve extras. I approve extra that the data can be transferred to the cloud. I approve extra that the conversations get transcripted, and so on, so that we implement a system where you have to approve extra things, and if you don't, that you still can use such things, because at the moment I can't use my Hello Barbie if I don't accept all of this.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how users and consumers embrace these listening technologies. Amazon Echo provides a certain level of functionality that a lot of people really enjoy, but let's be honest, I mean, it's pretty creepy. You have a device in your home that's listening to everything you say. That Barbie's kind of, it creeps me out, honestly, and I work in IoT. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what level of gratification users get from these devices and how successful they are, and then how that affects kind of the public viewpoint towards them, and then consequently how that affects policymaking. But I also think that there's a massive corporate responsibility. Okay, lunchtime. All right. I think there's a corporate responsibility, as Malte was alluding to, of an opt-in to these types of services. It shouldn't be an all or nothing type opt-in program. There should be all corporations should be saying, with the sensitive data that we're collecting in your home, you should, through each step, opt into these services, because I mean, it is a brave new world, and people are kind of creeped out by these things, but they also understand the advantage. And so it's going to be kind of a balancing act between the advantage of these services versus the creepy factor.
Fully agree with the previous speakers. I think a lot can be done by consumers, a lot can be done by companies. We really need to strike a balance between those data that are useful and really bring an added value to a product, and those that they're not needed for the purpose of this toy. I can bring an example. We as Intel produce drones. Actually, we provide cameras for drones, and this camera could actually catch all images around, but they don't, because the the purpose of this camera is just collision avoidance. So this camera can only see obstacles, but they cannot see if the details of this obstacle, and they do not retain the data related to that obstacle. So there are actually technical and organizational measures to put in place to find successful solutions.
Thank you. I wanted to close the panel by plugging an effort to address privacy and security of consumer devices. As I said in the beginning, I chair an IEEE Part 1912. It's Privacy and Security Architecture for Consumer Wireless Devices Working Group. This project is sponsored by IEEE's Communication Society and Standards Development Board, as well as the Consumer Electronics Society. The goal is to develop a standard to deal with the IoT technology that will be in consumers' homes from a privacy and security perspective. It's open, it's a volunteer effort. You don't have to be a member of IEEE to participate. It can be individuals, it can be companies, but we encourage you, I've encouraged you as the chair, if you have time and energy to delve into this more deeply and to try to come up with standards that would address some of these issues, you are encouraged to go online and do a quick look up of IEEE Part 1912. Thank you so much. Give a hand to our panelists. I think everyone did a wonderful job. And to the audience, thank you.